Yeah, we're live now.
Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the West Craven Area Committee, which is a committee of Pendle Council. And as ever nowadays, the meeting is virtual and it's streamed live on YouTube. And because it's a Pendle Council meeting, it has to operate to certain rules, which will explain essentially around speakers and those who are speaking, members of the public who are speaking to the committee need to have given notice, and we do have two such people tonight. I'll just check that they are here. I've got Mr. Morehouse, the applicant for the planning application that we have, and Mr. Blackburn. Could I just check that they're both online?
Yes, I'm here, Chair. Ben Morehouse, the applicant.
Thank you.
And I'm here as well, Chair. Andrew Blackburn.
Thank you very much. Just in terms of housekeeping, if I can ask people to mute if they're not invited to speak, and to unmute when they are making a contribution. We'll do introductions around the room, as it were, and then I'll get on with the rest of the procedural issues. So my name is David Whip. I'm a councillor here in West Craven and I chair the area committee. I'm going to go to the people who I can see on my screen. So it's in a sort of random Zoom order, as it were. So Councillor Hartley, Ken. Ken Hartley. Can you just introduce yourself, Ken? You need to unmute.
Watching cricket.
If those who aren't invited to speak could mute, please. Ken, you do need to unmute. Well, we can see your lips moving, Ken, but unfortunately I'm not a lip reader. So when you make a contribution to the meeting, you will have to unmute. I'm going to move on to Joanne Eccles.
Yes, I'm the committee administrator at Pendle Council.
Thank you very much. Mike Goulthorpe.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Goldthorpe, EB Ward Councillor for Pendle Borough.
Councillor Mills, Jane Mills.
Good evening, everyone. Jane Mills, Cotswold, Ward Councillor for Penolswick.
Thank you very much. Rosemary Carroll.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Rosemary Carroll, Ward Councillor for Earby.
Marjorie Adams.
Hi, I'm a ward councillor for Courts Ward.
Now then, I've got 4 icons at the bottom of the screen, which all say W. So I'll ask people. Councillor Tom Whip, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good evening. I'm Councillor Tom Whip. I represent Courts Ward.
Thank you very much. Neil Watson.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Neil Watson. I'm the planning manager for Pendle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I've got 2 other W's. So,
Chairman, it's Jane Watson. I'm just in the background this evening, so I'm one of the W's.
Thank you very much. Right, who is the remaining W? The big reveal.
It could be me.
No, Jennifer, you are a JP.
I wonder if it's me, Chair.
Right, David Walker. Thank you very much, David.
Good evening.
Right, we will move on then to Jennifer.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jennifer Purcell, Craven Ward Councillor for Pendle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we've got an L. Who's L? Live stream. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Carter, Colin.
Good evening, I'm Colin Carter, Ward Councillor for Earby Ward.
Thank you very much. And finally, I've got Ivan Hartley, who's a PCSO. Ivan, you still there?
Good evening all. Yeah, good evening all. My name's Ivan. I'm a PCSO covering Vivery Bridge Ward, Colne North, covering for Sergeant Tim Hitchin this evening.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that I've failed to ask to introduce themselves? By now, everyone should have the ability to press the unmute and mute buttons. Ken, is that you that's unmuted?
I'm not in the meeting.
Ken. Thank you. You were unmuted and it was noisy, to say the least. Right. In terms of tonight's agenda, we've got some procedural items. We'll then deal with police and community safety matters before moving on to planning applications, which we have one. I have been asked to take an urgent item at tonight's meeting, and it's about the breast screening in West Craven, and it's to do with the location of that screening. And I've, as chairman, determined that it is a matter of urgency due to the need to have a local unit for the current mammography sessions that are underway. So we'll come to that in due course. In terms of the agenda, I've got declarations of interest, which is where members of the committee need to declare any prejudicial pecuniary interests that they may have. Could I ask if there are any? No one's indicating, so we will take it that that's the case. Andy, could I ask you to mute, please? Andy Blackburn.
Of course.
Thank you. Item 2 is public question time, and were we to be meeting physically, this is an invitation for any members of the public present to raise issues that are not on the agenda but affect West Craven in some way. We haven't quite got this boxed off in terms of virtual meetings. I have no notification of any questions from members of the public. So with that, I'll pause for a moment just in case there are any, and we will move on. Item 3 are the minutes of the last meeting, and we'll just ask if somebody would move those as a correct record, please. I can see Councillor Tom Whip indicating there. Are they seconded, please? I can see Colin Carter's shadow waving at me, which I take is to be seconding. Can I ask if there's anybody thinks that they are in error in any way? Again, nobody's indicating, so we will take those as accepted. Item 4 then is an item on police and community safety issues. Excuse me. And the constabulary general report on the crime statistics that there are, and any updates that we might have, and we discuss any matters of concern since the last meeting. We have had those circulated. Is anybody able to put them up on screen, please? And then I'll just invite Ivan to contribute to the meeting. Ken reports that his connection keeps dropping out and the sound echo is very bad. Video will not switch on, saw him going to leave meeting and attempt to rejoin, but he is here. We can see you, Ken. So you are in the meeting.
Thank you. Yes, we've managed to connect again this time.
Thank you very much. Right, so we have the crime statistics up on screen. Thank you very much. And Ivan, do you want to, or are you able to comment on these? I appreciate that you are not an officer that regularly covers the West Craven area. Ivan, you need to unmute.
There we go. Sorry about that. I must apologise. This meeting's been dropped on me at the last minute, and I haven't had a chance to check up on the systems as to what the reason for the crime figures are.
Okay.
But I'll go through them as best I can. So obviously, this year and last year, the residential burglaries is a total of 4, which is the same. The commercial burglaries is down 2 on last year. The vehicle crime and hate crime are the same as last year. The assaults are down by 7 on last year. Theft is up by 2 on last year. Criminal damage is down by 8. All crime is down by 22. Unfortunately, due to COVID, the ASB is up by 8 this year on last. I said that the reason for that being is because with no specific recording mechanism to say whether it's COVID related and or ASB. So somebody in their wisdom's lumped them all in together. Looking at your screen there, I do believe Jeff's gone through and indicated each individual area and what the difference is between antisocial behaviour and the COVID related ones.
Okay, thank you very much. So just for the benefit of members of the public who may not be familiar with the way in which the figures are presented, we compare the figures for the month with the figures for the same month the previous year to see whether the position is better or worse or the same, and those are presented. So the plus and minus figures, the difference from last year's figures, and then, as Ivan has just alluded to, the ASB, which is antisocial behaviour, that the figures in brackets there are related to COVID-19 regulations and breaches of those issues, which could be a range of things from gatherings beyond what's permitted and so on and so forth. Ivan, are you able to say anything further? That's it as far as you're concerned.
With the crime figures or the hot for everything?
No, just on the figures for the moment.
Oh yeah, with the crime. Sorry, my mistake. I do apologise.
It's all right.
The crime figures for ASB, they cover from multiple occupants. You know, people going around to, and they shouldn't be there, as in not in each other's bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
They even go as far as like gatherings of more than 6 or up to 6, whichever it was at the moment. Even businesses that have traded even though they shouldn't be trading. So it does cover a really wide range of everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I ask if there are any questions on the figures that we've been presented? Ken, you're not muted. Is there anything that you want to ask about?
No, I'm reasonably happy that the explanations are there for these figures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask, I've got Mike Goulthorpe. Mike?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point, and I think I'm not looking for answers to this, but in West Craven as a whole, over the last 9 months, we've had in excess of 500 notified antisocial behaviour incidents, which is a lot in anybody's language. considerably more than last year. Understandable where we are, but I just think 500 across West Craven is a big figure. So I'll leave that there if I can, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. I think the point I'd make is that these are the reported incidents, and of course that may be the tip of the iceberg because a lot of them aren't reported for one reason or another. I'm going to move on now from the crime figures to matters of concern, and again, with Ivan not covering the area, we don't necessarily expect you to have any answers to the points that have been raised, but certainly in terms of Earby, there's been quite a considerable concern about the trashing of the Christmas tree, and I'm not sure if associated behaviour is the right phrase, but certainly there seems to be a cohort of people who are acting in very antisocial and criminal ways, and I think the whole committee will share my concern that we really do need to get a grip on that, and I appreciate that we do not have the provision for youth services that we once did, and that might be part of the reason problems, but nevertheless it's a big issue, and we need to take a wider look at how that's coming about and what we can do above and beyond enforcement. So I think the committee would share my concern, and that we put that on record as a matter that we want picking up not only by the police but referring to other agencies who may be able to contribute to the problem. Similarly, in Bonaldswick, we have a recurring issue with, in lots of cases, damage at Victory Park. We've discussed this at previous meetings, and perhaps stopping short of damage, antisocial activities. And I do know that in previous months we've had action reported, which has sought to get a grip on some of that, but nevertheless we've been reporting issues just this week, so it is a case that those problems do continue. So a couple of issues there which we hope you'd relay back, Ivan, to the sergeant and the rest of the team, and Joanne, if you could pick those up in terms of making representations perhaps to the county council, who still do provide room youth services. I'm sorry, I'm reading something else at the same time. So a couple of things there. Can I ask, are there any further issues that people want to raise?
Mr. Chairman, I've just got one to raise.
Sorry, Jennifer, if you could come in, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one issue that I have, because you've gone over all what I was going to say about the antisocial behaviour around Victory Park. The other one that I've got is speeding cars down Gisborne Road. Now, we've got cars on both sides. There's been nearly so many accidents, near misses down there. They're coming down from the town, and then there's a zebra crossing on Gisborne Road, and they're going way past them. Somebody's going to be killed before long. We've already had one accident down in Bracewell, through speed probably, but it's from there right the way through down to Bracewell, speeding cars, and also down through Salterford. They're just ignoring all the speed signs. But if you could take that on board and pass, we could have somebody with cameras. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Jennifer. Committee members will recall that we have discussed this on previous occasions. We have got a list not a very lengthy list, but of quite a few roads where we do have those concerns of speeding. We have taken that up with the County Council, obviously the Highway Authority, in the hope that they would make some provision for different aspects of that. And through the police, we have requested that the mobile speed camera, which was actually purchased by Bonalswick Town Council, which appears to be being used up and down the borough, has more use in Bonalswick, where it was actually purchased to be used for, if you get me drift. So I have contacted Tim Hitchen about that, the sergeant, and I'm hopeful that that could happen. I am aware that some enforcement was carried out on Kelbrook Road, but I read more about it happening elsewhere in the borough than I do in West Craven, and rather disappointed, to be honest. Ken, I've got you indicating.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support Jenny's recommendations there in terms of the speeding on Gisborne Road. But I'd also like to comment that it appears to me, because I do pass northwards towards Bracewell very frequently on that road, that the speed indicating device is extremely badly calibrated, and it comes on at about 10 to 12 miles an hour in a 30 limit zone. And perhaps it might improve people's behaviour pattern if that speed indicating device was set correctly instead of ludicrously low. And therefore I'm going to request that device be checked and it recalibrated, please.
Thanks, Ken. I've got David Walker indicating.
Sorry, Chair. It's just Councillor Mills wishes to speak and she can't raise her hand.
I have seen that message, but I respond to the electronic hands that are raised, so I've brought you in first. Jane.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to mention something that you've just already mentioned, actually, regarding the speeding around Barnoldswick, and we have been made aware that we've got a speed gun that's in operation. I was just going to put a request in that, you know, could we have that speed gun operating in Barnoldswick areas? Quite a few, as Jenny's mentioned earlier, Gisborne Road, and going along towards a mini roundabout as well. People don't seem to realise that you need to slow down there, and down Manchester Road as well, along that stretch. So I was going to come in, but as I say, I didn't have an IT hand to raise, so people got in before me anyway. Thanks for that.
Okay, we don't want you waving your 90 about. Oh, sorry, he said IT, not 90. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. It's just worth pointing out that by Manchester Road, it's the top section immediately past the 50 limit, not the lower section. That's a 20 mile an hour limit. That should be a 30 mile an hour limit. I think if we enforce the 20 mile limit there, there'd be a lot of complaints, and rightly so, in my opinion.
Okay. Can I wrap this up in a jumbo resolution that committee expressed concern about speeding traffic on various roads which have been mentioned in previous meetings, and that we reiterate our standing request to the constabulary to feature those routes in their ad hoc enforcement, and put a further resolution in regarding the role of the Lancashire Road Safety Partnership and the County Council, to resolve to remind them of our standing request for effective action along the A56 Skipton Road in Bonalswick and other routes, Kelbrook Road, where we do anticipate that perhaps more average speed cameras could be employed, or permanent speed cameras could be employed. We are talking about roads where there have been fatalities, where the killed and seriously injured, regrettably, are far higher than we would like. So perhaps we could just have a resolution encompassing the whole of that lot. Are people agreeable? Yeah. Nods generally. The icons, I can't see nodding, but never mind. Tom will tell me to put it on gallery view again, and perhaps I will do in a bit. Is there anything further that people want to raise? Ivan, do you want to come back to make any comments?
Yeah, with regards to the speed gun, just so you're aware, we are planning on doing some enforcement. We've just this week, we've been training up all the new PSSOs for the area so that we can use the gun. So I can tell you that that is coming up anytime soon. Can I ask, please, that any roads that you think may be of benefit for that, can you email either myself or PSSO Neil Walling or Sergeant Tim Hitchin, please?
Okay. I'll ask Joanne to do that. We have highlighted various routes over the past several months. So, those are on record, but we're more than happy to repeat the list.
I'm only asking because I don't have them, you see. So obviously I'm not privy to any conversations you've had previous. That's the only reason why I asked that.
Okay.
Regards to the ASBs that you mentioned, I'll just mention that every night between 6 and 10 p.m, the two PSSOs, and we have what's called or used to be called, an antisocial behaviour car, and we drive around the whole of Colne and West Craven looking specifically for youth misbehaving and causing antisocial behaviour, and Victory Park and the others in Victory Park, in Barnoldswick and the town centre in Airby are part of our antisocial behaviour hotspots. With regards to the speeding, I think at the moment there's a lot of people just abusing that, because through the evenings and the nights when we're in the office, we're getting ready to go out, the amount of people that drive past the police station, revving the cars, and I think they're trying to, they're just causing a massive nuisance at the moment. But we are looking into it. The task force, they're in Colne now, so we'll be using them more and more as well.
Good. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ivan. That's really helpful. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, so I'm going to thank you very much for attending and let you get about your other duties. But we are appreciative of you coming on. So having said that nobody else is indicating, Councillor Tom Whip has indicated.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just worth mentioning a member of the public has raised their concern in the live stream chat on the cars rezzing around Victory Park. And that's the continued priority for us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is definitely. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So can we pass on then? Thank Ivan and wish him a good evening. We're going to go on to the planning applications. We have one planning application on the agenda tonight, and that is the erection of one dwelling house at land to the southwest of 82 Esp Lane, Barnoldswick. I have two speakers notified to me. One is the applicant, Ben Morehouse, and the other is an objector, Andrew Blackburn. I'm going to take them in that order. Each of you have got up to 5 minutes. Ben, can I ask you to start, please?
Sure. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for enabling me to speak this evening. If you can't hear me, can you please notify me and let me know? Because otherwise,
you're coming across loud. You're loud and clear.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm Ben Morehouse, and I'm the applicant for the proposed proposal to build a single dwelling at land to the southwest of Esplain in Barnoldswick. I'd like to take the opportunity to provide further background to this application, address some of the public and neighbours' comments, and provide a summary of the supporting planning principles. I'm sure some of you are aware that I submitted an application on this land back in 2010 and spoke at the subsequent committee meeting. I think several of you were there that night 10 years ago. At the time, I explained that this land had been in the ownership of my family for almost, well, at the time it was 60 years, now it's 70 years, and that spans 3 generations. I think some of you may have known my great-grandparents, Maurice and Dorothy Dewhurst, who lived up at Springs Farm. My family and I are long-term custodians of this land, and I'm keen to build a house for my young family so that we can enjoy it too, and also it can be enjoyed by future generations. Back in 2010, the scheme that we designed wasn't appropriate. It received a lot of local objection and it was refused, and in hindsight, that was probably the right decision. However, in the intervening 10 years, my circumstances have changed. I now have a young family, and due to changes in working patterns, largely due to COVID-19, I can now work remotely. So in May this year, I dusted down the previous plans, considered the objections, particularly from the local community, and I commissioned a planning advisor and architect to redesign a home that would be more respectful to the views of local residents in the community, the conservation area, and other stakeholders. The revised plans provide for a long-term, sustainable, modest single dwelling of traditional design to create a family home which will add to the current streetscape and not be detrimental. However, there is still a number of objections, and I appreciate that a number of local residents have engaged in the planning process and no doubt will hear the views of Mr. Blackburn this evening. However, I feel, having read all of them, that these are disproportionate to the scale of the development and also a misunderstanding of our intent of the scheme and its impacts. To be clear, this is an application for a single dwelling for a family home. We're not developers looking to rampage over the countryside. We want to build something of real quality that actually adds to this conservation area and adds to this area of beauty. We are long-term owners, as I've mentioned, and we're looking to add to the local community and not take away from it. And having read all the comments, they do not reflect the nature and intent of the proposals and our intent. Partly this is due to the mechanics of the planning process, but this is also due to our inability to engage with the local community during the pandemic and explain our intent in more detail. And hopefully I'm getting some of that across this evening. We are confident that the public views have been addressed by the redesigned house and the subsequent revisions we have made during the planning process. The views of our future potential neighbours are important to us, so we are sensitive to them, because this will be our family home and this land is part of my own heritage. As such, I intend to maximise the beauty of it and its surroundings, and hopefully me and my family can once again become part of the local community. Finally, I'd just like to close off with the supporting planning criteria. The Pendle local plan supports housing in sustainable locations outside but close to the settlement boundary. The proposed dwelling is on land adjoining the settlement boundary. The location is both sustainable and accessible within walking distance of the local shops, schools and bus stops. The dwelling has been very carefully designed by our architects to respect the character of Esplain and the conservation areas. As mentioned earlier, we have tried to address the issues of the previous application by moving the dwelling further back into the site, positioning it to reflect the layout of the existing properties on Esplain, and creating, as mentioned, a simple traditional dwelling constructed from good quality natural materials that provide a positive contribution to the local area. This application is supported by Lancashire County Council Highways Officer, Pendle Borough Council's Conservation and Environmental Officers, and most importantly, the Planning Officer. We have taken on board the feedback throughout the process of the application and made improvements to our initial design. adding stone sets at the entrance, improving the visual displays, and also providing further landscaping. Hopefully this evening I have demonstrated our long-term commitment to this land and my family's intentions to create a new home. I would respectfully ask that the committee follow their officer's recommendation of approval and approve our application. Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm going to invite Mr. Blackburn, Andrew Blackburn, to make his contribution.
Thank you, Chair. And as Ben says, thank you to all of you for allowing me to speak for the committee. I'd like to focus on two main aspects of the planning application, if I may. The first one is the fact that the positioning of a building at this location still destroys a historic vista. I hope you've received a document that Joanne kindly sent to councillors and put on for public view, I think, today. And that document contained two pictures. One of them was the view that you would see if you were walking up Esplane. In our view, it's a view that 10 years ago, the planning inspectorate rules unacceptable. And we believe passionately that it still remains unacceptable today. And as I say, if you look at that picture, you'll get a sense of the overbearing nature of it. Ben's talked about the National Planning Framework, and I'd like to too. Paragraph 193 of the National Planning Framework requires that you've got to look at, the significance on a designated heritage asset very carefully. But in this report, we've been told that 1 3-bedroom house is conferring a public housing benefit that outweighs what is classed as a minor harm caused to a historic site. Well, 108 letters of objection, that's almost 40 more than there were 10 years ago. Massively disagree with that opinion. Our belief is that the setting of the conservation area will be significantly adversely affected by the proposal. The historic vista, it's not slightly affected, it's destroyed, it's gone forever. The planning report compiled by Pendle Planning summarises 108 letters into 9 points, and we would respectfully say that's too simplistic and is misleading. A wide variety of genuine issues are raised in those letters. Residents and visitors who know the area intimately also know that the additional development to this very narrow lane location will cause upset, inconvenience and damage. Walls, hedges and trees are bound to be damaged no matter how careful constructors are. And also we have concerns relating to flooding and safety upon its completion. And yes, I acknowledge what Ben said about the highways and various other people, but to have our concerns watered down in such a way, we felt was unhelpful to the discussion. The second aspect I want to focus on, and the last aspect, is what we would describe as the apparent tearing up of any safeguards of the Pendle local plan. That document provides a broad framework for protection and enhancement to Pendle's natural and historic environment. And as Ben said, 10 years ago, a first unsuccessful application didn't respect those boundaries and it was refused. The second revised application, which went before this committee, did respect that boundary, but it was obvious to everybody, yourselves and the planning inspector, that area is not large enough to build a house, and it was refused and an appeal rejected. Our problem is that, as with the first application 10 years ago, this application once again doesn't respect the development boundaries set out in the local plan. It more than doubles the plot size that is designated for building, and crucially is located mainly, not partially, as stated in the planning report you've received, within the open countryside, outside the settlement area boundary of Barnoldswick. And we think it's staggering to see this when you look at the actual maps. And again, the document that I sent via Joanne, thank you, shows clearly the two distinct areas, and you can see it more than doubles in size. For us to be told that it's now okay to use a conservation area land because it's next to the settlement area has just led to widespread disbelief. We believe it sets a massively dangerous precedent that will be quoted across all the wards of Pendle. in one fell swoop, every carefully constructed site plan that is adjacent to a settlement area is made redundant. Each of these sites could more than double in size. It would seem to be an utterly extraordinary situation to be placed in and present an enormous threat to our open countryside. So, councillors, I'll conclude, please. Don't accept the flawed recommendation that the development should be approved. The old adage, 2 wrongs don't make a right, sums up this situation accurately. The committee understood it was not appropriate to build on this site 10 years ago, and you were vindicated by the planning inspectorate. As regards the inappropriateness of erecting a gable end wall in such a prominent position, this remains the case today, and countless residents and visitors will thank you for refusing it. As regards the fact that you're defending the principle that open countryside outside a settlement area shouldn't be developed, well, it won't just be the residents, it will be countless generations of people will thank you for your courage.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both speakers for sticking more or less to time. I'm going to ask Mr. Watson if he would comment on the application and the contributions that have just been made. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, this is a balanced case. We have had an inspector's report previously when we've taken note of that and what the inspector said within that. But and I hear what Mr. Blackburn said about the countryside edge, etc. But Chairman, we are in a different world now. So you've all gone still on. Can people still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, you've just gone still on my screen. Thank you, Chairman. We are in a different planning position. We've got a new local plan. We have a new national planning policy framework, and I'm afraid the settlement boundaries in the current national planning policy regime aren't sacrosanct. I understand people think they should be, but I'm afraid they're not. And we do have policies which allow edge of settlement developments, and that's the national position, and our policies have followed what the government have set out. Chairman, this is about the impact on the conservation area. Clearly, we've had an inspector. Interestingly, it was Mr. DeCane who was the inspector of our local plan. So he's set the policies now that he refused to dismiss the original appeal, but set the policy framework that we're considering the application under. So that's an interesting point. Chairman, it's about the impact on the conservation area. On the one hand, you will encroach into that area, but on the other hand, and I've spoken to our conservation officer, looking at the setting you now have when you're looking back into the conservation area, because 2 different things. One's a vista, one's a setting, and you have to be careful about how you consider those. You've got modern bungalows which are contributing to that setting. The view we've taken is that an enhanced design and development there would, in fact, add something that is presently detracted from in terms of the modern bungalows there. But Chairman, I would have to say it is a balanced decision. We have thought carefully about what weighting to give to it, but in our view, the planning balance is tipped in favour of recommending approval. But I would just add one thing, Chairman. The tilted balance isn't applicable here, but it's one of the situations in terms of heritage assets that you don't have to engage the tilted balance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And I think Mr. Watson is quite correct that committee are considering the impact on the conservation area. There has been reference to the highway issues in passing, and it's important to recognise that the planning inspector almost 10 years ago in 2011 did say that highway safety wasn't an issue. I'm paraphrasing there, I might not have exactly correct, but it's not an issue that we can introduce into any decision that we take this evening. However, as Mr. Watson has just said, the impact on the conservation area is probably the touchstone in terms of any decision that the local planning authority this committee makes, and I think that's what the committee needs to concentrate on. Mr. Blackburn referred to the report compressing a lot of information into a few bullet points. I understand that concern. For myself, and I'm sure other councillors, we have read the comments on the planning portal, and we're taking all that information into account. We've also visited the site to refresh our memories as to how it lies in the land, and what it looks like, and what the views are around about. And we would have put some pictures up, but due to a camera failure, unfortunately, we're not able to do so tonight. But I'm sure that other committee members will have visited this area, and I can see a few nods around the members of the committee. So we are aware of the situation up there. I'm not seeing anybody indicating they want to speak, so I will carry on just for a little while. For myself, and I'm a ward councillor, and I appreciate I'm chairing this committee. I appreciate Mr. Morehouse's comments that the application that we have before us is different to what we had a decade ago. I would have been one of the councillors sat in the meeting and making a decision on that. At the time, we refused the application. It did go to appeal. The planning inspector did agree that the impact on the conservation area was such that it was inappropriate. And despite the changes that have been made, I do still think that the impact on the conservation area does mean that it fails to preserve and enhance the conservation area, and that even though there are, in planning terms, the benefits that Mr. Morehouse outlined, the harm that's done to the conservation area is outweighed by that harm. And I particularly am thinking of the conservation area in terms of those buildings that have been there, I will say, for time immemorial, but for a long period of time, rather than any of the modern intrusions, were built in a rural setting. And I think looking up Esplane, you get that appreciation of those older properties on your right with the open field in front of you. And I think the development would tend to close that off. And so that's the impact on the conservation area that most concerns me. So I'm minded not to support approving this tonight. I'm not going to move anything from the chair. I will invite other committee members and hear what they have to say. So I'm still looking for somebody to indicate that they want to come in. I'll bring ward colleagues in. Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Chair. I am quite familiar with this area and pass by pretty frequently. It is, to me, a very, very delicate balance indeed. And I do appreciate both what Mr. Morehouse and Mr. Blackburn have explained to us this evening. The concept of building there is a bit of an anathema to me. It does destroy a vista, and even with lots of camouflage, unless it's set lower down in the countryside, which is very difficult since its ground level is much higher than the bottom end of S Lane itself. It's very, very difficult to see how, in the short term, it would not impact on that vista. Contrary to belief about highway, I'm very familiar with the fact that that particular bend at the bottom of West Lane there and the S-Lane side of the proposed building site collects huge amounts of debris that flow out of the fields and down S-Lane itself when there is any substantial rainfall. And I am worried about messing about with runoff levels and flood control. And I failed to see with a driveway emitting directly onto the highway there that is in any way going to improve what essentially becomes a skating rink, even without frost. If you come down S-Lane and you hit the pile of pebbles that gathers outside where the driveway is proposed to be, and lower down S-Lane, it's a very dangerous sort of slidey situation at the best of times if you try and brake approaching the bend at the bottom of S-Lane there. Notwithstanding that isn't truly a part of how I really feel. I do echo what Councillor Whip has said, and I do reflect that in my mind it is an imposition on the impact of the conservation area, and I'm similarly minded not to support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Are you moving something?
I will take it upon myself to move refusal, yes.
Thank you very much. On the basis of impact on the conservation area.
Correct.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
Second that, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Thanks, Jennifer. That's moved
very
and
much.
seconded. Can I ask if there's anybody else wishes to speak? No. Jane,
Yes.
Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Chairman. I kind of agree with both yourself and Councillor Hart regarding the balance. It is a very delicate one. To my mind, taking the whole area into consideration, I think it will be detrimental to both the vista and the setting. Walking up S Lane, being a bridle way as it is, used by all sorts of people seeking to get out into the outdoors there, horse riders, cyclists, walkers. You go along that stretch of land and looking across to the hills over the other side there. It's a very peaceful place with abundance of wildlife there. It's a beautiful spot, it really is. And I can see where the attraction is, what attracts people to get into that area. And I just feel I wasn't here as a councillor when the first one came, the application was put in. So I can see both the applicant and the objector's point of view, but I'm tilting towards the detrimental side of the two there, the vista and the setting, and you know, it's just something that in open countryside there. I just feel that's the way that I want to go with it. That I'll side with yourself and Councillor Hartley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if there's anybody further who wishes to speak? No. Right, I've only got the one proposal on the table, which is to refuse, and it's my shorthand in terms of saying the impact on the conservation area. I'm sure that Mr. Watson would wish to sort of formally record that as with planning words in there. But are we content to take a vote on that resolution? Is there any contrary resolution put forward? No. Okay. Right. I will take the vote, and if anybody wants to vote against, please indicate now, either by shouting out or otherwise drawing it to my attention. I am not hearing or seeing anybody wanting to vote against. So those in favour, I will take as the whole of the committee. Right. I think that's a unanimous decision by the West Craven Committee. Mr. Morehouse, Mr. Watson will advise you of the decision in due course, and you know, clearly there are options that you may take, including perhaps a resubmission or an appeal. So I'm sure that we probably haven't seen the end of this. For anybody that's watching the webcast, the decision has been taken, and it is now with the applicant. If they want to take it any further, there are options that they can pursue. So can I thank both speakers for attending. You're very welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting, but I assume that you don't really want to do that. So thank you, and we will move on then to the other planning issues that we've got tonight. And item 5B is a list of appeals that we have had. The committee has a report, and I keep meaning to get all this teed up so that I can put it up on screen, but we always seem to be pressed for time, so it doesn't happen. But the appeals that we have been notified of, where we've got decisions, are one for Dalfor Limited, which is for Whitemore Pumping Station, where the appeal was dismissed. Thank you very much for putting that up. And then the second one is one for the rear of 2125 Duxbury Street at Earby, where the appeal has been allowed. So that's the state of play with appeals. Mr. Watson, I'm not aware that there's any further appeals currently in the offing. Well, we may have one now, but
Chairman, no, we've got rid of most of our appeals. A couple have come in today, but none related to West Craven.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to item 6, which is enforcement action, and we've got two reports of enforcement action, one relating to the former Gospel Mission Hall at the rear of Hollins Road in Barnoldswick, where I don't think there's been any update. There hasn't been any movement on this one for some time. It went to court. The defendant was ordered to pay a fine and cost in the sum of £976, and the matter, it's reported on the paperwork that the matter is to be taken back to court as the notice has not been complied with. Mr. Watson, are we aware if there's been any further movement since that report was prepared?
Chairman, we got the evidence yesterday. We need to go and recheck. Mr. Mannion, head of building control, went to take photographs to see if it had been complied with. It hasn't. So, Chairman, there are a couple of new solicitors starting, I believe, in legal services, and we will pursue the matter through them.
Thank you very much. And then the second one is land at Unit 2, Victory Business Park, and you reported at the last meeting lawfulness would its determination would possibly lead to this being taken off the agenda. Has that changed at all?
That's still the case, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're noting that. Are there any further comments or questions on that? Nope. In which case, we move on to item 7, which is the capital programme. We have a substantive report. We don't have any requests for funding for different schemes. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Tom Whip. You're muted.
No, Chair.
Mill Race.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes. We did have discussions at the beginning with the drainage engineer about installing a new cage on the inlet. The lads to check that hasn't appeared to have been done. Although the rest of the work does look satisfactory. So I would just question if that's still to be done and paid for, or has been excluded from the work and therefore not been paid for. Yeah.
Okay. So the committee has asked whether they would deallocate £280 that we've got as change on this job, and Councillor Tom Whip is querying whether the work has been completed to the satisfaction of ourselves. So I think we're just leaving that one in abeyance for the time being to see whether that cage over the Mill Race inlet will be sorted out or not. Is that okay? Are there any further issues on the capital programme? If not, we'll move on. Item 8 is the reopening funding, and you recall that we have first of all a sum of funding from European Regional Development Fund towards helping with reopening town centres in Barnoldswick and Airby, and then we've got a further revenue sum from Pendle Council for the same end. Clearly, with going into national restrictions, with lots of business being closed down, some of them still required to be closed as we move into tier 3, presumably, then it's a very different situation to what we had hoped we might have had by this time. But nevertheless, there's quite a bit of work being done in terms of both promoting the town, or the two towns, and the issue of encouraging people to use town centre businesses by providing shelter. I think, Councillor Tom Whip, you are probably best just to report where we're up to on those.
Yeah, we've had a measure up along Albert Road to look at putting in some pop-ups on there. Those would provide shelter for the queues outside shops once they reopen, and for the ones that are currently open as well. We're expecting the weather to get worse over the winter. the other avenue that I pursued was looking at an online app to help businesses sell their goods with delivery. I found an app called Shorkle, and I was happy to find out that they service an area with no upfront costs. If the businesses sign up with them, it's no cost to us. They handle advertising, and delivery drivers all themselves. And I think that would be a really great initiative to get on with, really.
Okay. Just going back to the shelter on the pavements, we've also had a look at Victoria Road in Earby, and the sections of Victoria Road and Colne Road where the pavements and the frontages are wide enough to accommodate a 3 metre wide canopy, for the want of a better word, and Councillor Tom Whip and myself reckon we can get these canopies in, and it's quite difficult missing doorways and street furniture and stuff like that, but we can get some beneficial canopies in, but it is limited to those 2 streets in Earby because of the width of the pavements, and the Albert Road in Bonalswick again because of the width of the pavements, and that is eligible for the ERDF funding. So we really need to convene the meeting with town centre businesses that we agreed to do at a previous meeting, so that we can actually get the nod of approval from businesses. I think the difficulty is that there is only a very limited number of places where you can put the physical canopies in, because you'd have to, you couldn't do it on Water Street in Earby, for instance, because there just isn't enough carriageway width, and you can only do it in other places by taking parking out of use. And I think the balance of opinion in terms of providing a canopy for pedestrians or having the parking spaces would always, on balance, unless you're talking about an odd 1 or 2, the balance of opinion would be we'd rather have a parking, thank you very much. That's much more beneficial to businesses than the other stuff. So I think the last hurdle in terms of the canopies is having suitable ballast, so that they're safe and secure and they're not liable to shift. And Councillor Tom Whip's been working on that in terms of the weight of ballast and how would you achieve that to best effect. And it's probably with containers with water rather than us having concrete and things like that. So it looks like we're almost ready to go, but we do need to get some approval from businesses. We've approached some and got verbal agreements from individual businesses affected, but we're looking at the wider business community. And then in terms of the Shorkle proposal, as Tom says, there's no upfront costs. However, there is a charge, a percentage that the business would have to pay in terms of any purchases made through that. So that's how the app makes its money. And again, whether businesses will be interested in that, we don't really know. So our suggestion is that we proceed with those 2 proposals in the very short term, and that the wider promotional stuff we work on with a view to hopefully having more businesses open when it gets into the early part of next year, and we're more able to have an offering that people are interested in coming and using and supporting businesses and spending their money. Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions, really, and thank you for the work you're doing on this. I've got to say, it's still very disappointing to me that Aby Town Council have not been involved up to now. These are the pop-up canopies we're talking about with canvas roofs or that sort of thing, or we're talking about issues like vandalism, responsibility for putting them up and down, and that sort of thing springs to mind. Particularly in Aby at the moment. But yeah, I think that would be, if we can get the businesses on board to take some responsibility for them, and they do want them, then I think that's something that's worthwhile doing, without doubt. But again, vandalism would be an issue. Gone are the days, of course, when every shop had a rollout awning. There you go. Full circle, but I think that would be the concerns for me, and how long they would be able to be looked after and taken down, would leave them up and so forth. They're just there waiting to be vandalised, aren't they? But again, thanks for your work.
Okay, well, I'm a little less pessimistic than yourself in terms of any potential damage. And I mean, our experience has been, we put lots of stuff into the public areas, and I'm always delighted at the very minimal amount of damage that occurs, and both through the events type stuff that we do, and for instance, Banalswick in Bloom. We put artifacts out, which, have some intrinsic value, and, they're left there for years on end, and, they're still there. Nobody's nicked them or anything like that. The first option that we looked at in terms of providing the shelter was hiring marquees in from, professional marquee companies. And when we did the sums, it just didn't stack up. The cost of the hire over a long period would have just swallowed every penny that was available and beyond as well. So that didn't really work out. But the same concern about any possible damage would be there with those, because they're not indestructible either. So we think that the sort of thing that we're looking at, they are as robust as you can be at reasonable cost, and clearly looking at safety, we need to be assured that they will be sustainable over the winter months. And I think that comes back to the nature of the ballast and how that's applied, so that it's not causing an obstruction or a trip hazard and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite involved, but we think it's doable, and certainly we'd like to see those covers, that protection in place as soon as ever we possibly can now in December. Have we got the blessing of committee to proceed on that basis? Vigorous nods all around the room. So we'll take that as read. Is there anything else on reopening? Nope. We're going to move on then to outstanding items. And can we just make a note, Joanne, that as far as the Transdev buses is concerned, we do have the responses. So if we could ask for a substantive report to the next meeting, that would be helpful. Thank you. Before we go on to item 10, I did mention at the beginning of the meeting that I've been requested to have an urgent item which is about breast screening, and Councillor Tom Whip, you flagged this up with me, so I'll bring you in if I may.
Thank you, Chair. Usually the breast cancer screening service at the Butts Clinic in Barnoldswick, and that's a mobile unit that comes in. Throughout the pandemic, the users of this service have been forced to go to Burnley, much to their dismay. I mean, the reason they gave for it was it's I don't know really, safe for the staff. But what they find when they get to Burnley is it's not the Burnley Hospital where they're doing the service. It's actually the mobile unit parked up in Burnley. There's many factors really that make it very inconvenient. First of all, if you're going through a lockdown, you're advised against travel out of the area. People can feel very upset, uncertain, scared even to travel so far into the heart of the COVID pandemic in the Northwest. Many people, older, rely on public transport. You then have to take the public transport to Burnley again. In the middle of the pandemic, it's not very nice. And when they get to Burnley, they see the mobile unit that usually comes to Barlick, usually runs the service in Barlick on the doorstep, and you can understand their frustration. I think we need to be asking whoever's in charge of this at the NHS to reconsider the current strategy. I think we need to get to the bottom of why it's not coming to Barnoldswick anymore. Is it the old Butts Clinic that's because it's become unusable, derelict, that they can't use it there and they're using the pandemic as an excuse to not come to Barnoldswick? If that's the case, there's council-owned lands that they could easily utilise, Wellhouse Road car park, for example. I know there's other mobile units, such as the blood donation bus, that comes to the town and uses a private car park. I don't know what the arrangements are there. But there are other avenues to this that they could explore. I think for the people of Barnoldswick, we should pursue every one of them.
Okay, thank you very much. I would certainly concur. It's a critical issue. I agree to take it as a matter of urgency because ladies in West Craven are being invited to have mammographies at the current time, and rather than having people having to go all the way to Burnley, it would be beneficial to have it on our doorsteps. So I think if it hasn't been moved, that we would ask committee to support representations to the respective health authorities to locate the mobile mammography unit at a suitable location in West Craven, and that we ask our officers if we need to find a location, we ask our officers to work on providing one. Can I ask if there's any further comments from anybody? Jane. Councillor Mills.
Thank you for that, Chairman. Yeah, I did actually get an appointment through to go visit one of these, but with what's been going on the last few weeks, I haven't been able to progress it. So I'm quite surprised at the fact that you have to go all the way to Burnley to have these, you know, various vulnerable people travelling on public transport in this COVID world. We need to get one of these mobile units. You know, if we can get one in Barnoldswick and get one in Earby as well. You know, we want to keep travelling to a minimum. I mean, it's a big effort with all the different transport that you have to get all the way to Burnley, and you're exposing yourself to a different environment. You know, with all the tears and everything. So. I just don't think it's good, and I think we need to make strong representations about this and get them over into our area.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, is committee agreed that we met those representations? Everybody's that I can see is nodding, so we'll take that as carried. Item 10 is exclusion of press and public, and we do have a further item on the agenda, which, because of GDPR, we need to exclude members of the public. I notice that Mr. Blackburn is still with us. We're going to have to boot him out, and we're going to have to shut the live stream down. Can I thank anybody that's been watching us on YouTube? Thank you for coming along. If anybody's watching us on YouTube in the future, I hope the viewing our meeting has been beneficial. I accept that it's ramshackle and a load of rubbish, but you know, we do our best. So thank you very much for watching, whenever that might be, and we'll say au revoir for now, because we're going to kick you out.